With Alpha 20 rearing its head at me and the half-finished scripts piling up, I recently decided to take a little detour from our regularly scheduled Stories of Navezgane. I took on a relevant project that was a bit more meta. So long as that ball is still rolling, before we return to cracking open Untold stories, I wanted to clear up some controversial details of my most popular video to date, and at the same time, tell you guys my own side story. That is, the untold story of the untold story of 7 Days to Die. Is that dumb? Is that too dumb? That's kinda dumb. If you, like many others, subscribe to my channel after watching this video, stick around for a minute. This should be both entertaining and hopefully clarifying. Almost 2 years ago now, before video production was my profession, I mostly uploaded barely edited Dungeons & Dragons sessions. In the midst of all that, as the COVID-19 pandemic came into its first full swing, I decided out of the blue to make something different. It took quite a while, making it in Windows Movie Maker. But eventually I uploaded the video. It got a couple hundred views, I think, nothing too special. But then completely out of left field, a much more popular 7 Days to Die YouTuber uploaded a video with almost the exact same title. Organically then, people who finished watching that were directed by the algorithm to my video, and as far as my own metrics at the time went, the video exploded. To this day, it is my most popular video by far, seeing anywhere from 200 to 500 views in any given 48-hour period. To this day, it is my least favorite video I've ever uploaded. There are a million different ways I could format this video, but to be honest, I don't want to spend that much time on something that isn't exactly what you guys have subscribed for, so I'm gonna do it the easy way. Hi, there have been so many comments on that video pointing out how I might be wrong about one thing or right about another, why the video is bad, why the video is good. So much postulation and so many theories that you guys have, which has been awesome. So if you're still interested, let's watch it back together, and I'll pause here and there, probably there, to explain what I know is right, wrong, or just downright stupid now. Alright, I'm not excited for this. It's gonna be painful, but it needs to be done, so let's go ahead and watch together. 7 Days to Die is a game of survival. One where you, the player, are tossed into a landscape of desolation and told, good luck, with only a few starting tips on how to make it in this world. When I first started playing the game around 6 years or so, I immediately have to point out the mic quality. Dude, I had zero tools. I had zero tools for upgrading the microphone quality whatsoever. Like in Premiere now, I have denoise, I have auto clicker remove, like I have so many things to help my audio. And in this video, it is so painfully obvious that at the time I didn't. Anyway, the video. Go. I had a lot of questions. The funny thing is, I still have a lot of questions. Valid. I still have a lot of questions. Questions like, who are we? Where are we? How did we get here? What happened? How long has this zombie apocalypse thing been going on? Why are we so alone, usually? Where is everyone? Why are these traitors just big chillin' everywhere? How are you? Where is the military? I like that I slipped that in. Why don't I sleep? And why did I start playing this game at 8 p.m. only to blink and check the clock, and now it's 2 a.m. somehow? How did that happen? Still true. The long drawn out sigh. Why did I feel the need to let the rest of this play out? Okay, I know this isn't the point of this video, but I also am probably going to be pointing out a lot how much I hate my editing on this. And granted, again, I made this in Windows Movie Maker, but the editing choices I made, not even just the fault of Windows Movie Maker, that's all that I had. Just the editing choices I made, Let's dive into this. You can hear my mic pop back. The game, honestly, just doesn't give you much. When it was first released, the devs, the Fun Pimps, teased it eventually having a real story. But nearly 7 years later, there's no concrete sign of that happening. There just isn't a storyline. There isn't a trail of quests that lead to figuring out what the hell is going on. It's just a game. But there doesn't have to be a story if the gameplay loop is entertaining. But There are in fact some clues scattered about Navezgane, Arizona, the default setting for the game. There are newspapers, ruins, supply caches, and other contextual happenings that may give us some idea of what's really going on here. This video doesn't assume... Can we talk about... Hold on, can we get a good frame here? Can we talk about... the facial hair? Dude, you can't grow a beard. Just accept it. Shave. Just shave. Why did I think it was a good idea to upload that face? I'm sorry. Okay. Anyway, I think it was, this is like 3 months into the COVID-19 pandemic when lockdown was like really happening. I guess I just didn't care at the time, but like if I was going to be showing my face to the internet in this way, why would just shave? You can't grow a real beard. I still can't grow a real beard, really, not... That there's a well-established lore in 7 Days to Die. Many mechanics are clearly there to be nothing more than fun mechanics, because it's a video game. I mean, a zombie busting through a concrete wall sound... Also, I just want to point out, funny thing, I have my own office now. I got an office space. I got plenty of space in here. At the time, this was, I guess you could call it my guest bed. My girlfriend at the time, fiance now, and I were living in a 2-bedroom, tiny apartment. Like, we're probably talking like 600 square feet, tiny little apartment. This was officially the guest bed because we only needed 1 bedroom, but it was mostly just my office. So there was a mattress. The room was about the size, like maybe half the size of my current office. And so there's a mattress taking up like a third of it, and then my desk, which I had to squeeze in between my desk and the mattress to get to where I sat, and I had maybe like behind me I had maybe 2 to 3 inches of room. This was such a tiny little space. It's just funny to look back on. Sounds pretty ridiculous. Clearly some of this is not meant to be looked into very deeply. No, none of it is. I'm going to look into all of that very deeply and see what kind of stories we can come up with. And so it began. Everything we can find for a reason, and that anything and everything can be a clue. The slow fade, the fade to black, the slow, shitty fade to black and fade in from black, it was the only transition I had on Windows Movie Maker, and so I just used it to hell. And it hurts. It hurts now to watch. Goal by the end of this video is to review whatever we can find, piece by piece, and at the end of it all, construct the most complete and reasonable story I can. So buckle in, it's gonna be a really, really bumpy ride. Also, the seatbelts don't work and the rails are on fire. So with that, let's start from the start. That's good. Who are we? These terrible title screens, they're literally, I just took random images that came up on Google when you search 7 Days to Die, and just slapped some text on them and put them down. Hey. When you start a new game in Navezgane, you typically spawn half naked with nothing but some basic survival supplies. Some water, some food, some first aid. That's pretty much it. You also typically spawn next to an old car and some boxes, crates, and bags, though this isn't always the case. It kind of is, actually. I don't know about when I recorded this, but now, anyway, in 7 Days to Die, there are actually, if you go into the POI filter, there are actually designated spots, like maybe 6 or 7, 8, I don't know, not a lot, like less than a dozen, I think, designated spots where you spawn, and I think almost all of them, or maybe even all of them, are the same thing. There's like a car or two in front of you with some boxes and like loot bags, just some basic stuff, like your first few things to loot. So anyway, fun fact. Regardless, when you spawn in, there are 2 other things of note. Notes. So the first thing you are met with is this, a note from a kind stranger. It reads, oh my god, not only am I hanging on the screen for so long, my mouse is there and you can see it moving around. I'm sorry, I know I'm supposed to also be clarifying things that, like, I know now that I didn't know when I made this video about 7 Days to Die, and we will get to that. We're almost there. But I can't get over how much I hate this video. Okay. It's, dear friend, the wasteland can be an unforgiving place. I found you naked and left for dead with no supplies. I think the note is still the same now. It looks like you crossed the Duke in a bad way, and you could use some help. Enclosed is a short guide to help you survive. If you complete it, we might just take in a new citizen. Weird breath. Weird the pause. White River Settlement. It's real, and it's safe. Peace be with you, Noah. So, we were just somebody passing through the area, probably on the brink of death, and this guy just found us and saved us. Sort of? This doesn't tell us much about our character, but the White River Settlement. We'll take a look at that later. I think I do get to this eventually, but I don't like that I just started with a wrong assumption. Anyway, we're not just passing through the area. There's a lot of evidence that we, in fact, lived in Navezgane this entire time. Our character was not some nomad that passed into Navezgane by chance because of the radiation zone completely encircling Navezgane, which is a whole thing on its own. I actually do go over that in, I'll put it right here, this video here. I do go over how it's pretty much impossible for anyone to enter or leave Navezgane apart from the plane that drops supplies, but there's also some fuckery with that. Anyway, no, we were not a nomad. We definitely have been living in Navezgane this entire time. The player character, that is. But what about the Duke? What or who is the Duke? Good question. Luckily, the next clue in our starting inventory tells us a little bit more. We have a note from the Duke, and it reads, "Just a friendly reminder that you pay on time every time, or there will be consequences. I think this note hasn't changed either. Next time, we won't be so nice. Thanks for the gear, but you still owe us. See you soon." Another thing that I wish I had expanded upon in this video is why do we owe the Duke? Why is our character in particular in debt to the Duke? There are a lot of good questions to be asked there. Does everyone owe the Duke? Does everyone owe him tribute? And yes, in fact, most likely, we do have at least a couple of voice lines that I've used in more recent videos, clearly showing that at least some of the traders owe regular tributes or protection payments to the Duke. And perhaps that's why gangs were formed in the first place, the gangs that we have evidence of through the notes that give us quests. Perhaps those are strictly anti-Duke gangs. Perhaps they are for Duke. We don't really know, but there's a lot more to this whole Duke series. I mean, I made a whole video on him that I didn't touch on here, which I wish I had. Okay, so we weren't just passing through. So now I get live here. Yes. And the Duke is some mob tyrant that threatens survivors in Navezgane for protection money. That is precisely correct. Well, we still don't know a whole lot about ourselves. What we can surmise, though, is that we live in Navezgane, probably previously just a nomadic scavenger barely scraping by, given we don't have any sort of starting base. Possibly. When I said that we don't have any sort of starting base, there are tons of like survivor camps and whatnot that we could have previously lived in. So maybe we either couldn't or wouldn't pay the Duke and his gang, and so they kicked our ass and left us half naked and with barely anything on us for good old Noah to come around and drag us to relative safety. Sorta. Okay, another thing I didn't touch on here that I wish I had. Noah probably didn't just help us out of the goodness of his heart. Maybe he did. He is kind of portrayed as the good guy based on this kind of loose story that I've been putting together lately, where it's the Duke versus Noah. But the Duke is also, he needs people. He needs help. He needs everyone, every body, every brain, every heart he can get to oppose the Duke. And so it is actually within his best interest as a leader of a faction, White River, probably, to help people like the player character. So maybe not entirely out of the goodness of his heart, but maybe. That's a start. It is. And that all seems fair. Vague and basic backstory for a vague and frankly basic setting. But there are some less conventional ideas the community has floated around. Maybe. And I mean just maybe. We're a robot. I don't know. Or at least some sort of android or something less than fully. I literally just took my player character in full iron armor, cropped it terribly, and put it on screen. Like, I think at the time I realized this was funny and dumb, but like, man, there are gonna be a lot of people who just don't realize that, and the video is just gonna look bad. Human. I know immediately it sounds ridiculous, but there's actually some evidence this could be the case. I mean, firstly and most importantly, we don't sleep. The option isn't even there. I know there are plenty of games where you don't have to sleep, but the option is usually there. In those games, you're clearly not a robot because you can sleep. In 7 Days to Die, it's not an option for us at all. Funny thing, actually at the time, yeah, it wasn't really. I think I theorized later in the video that perhaps we do sleep, and when we die, that's actually just us like waking up from a nightmare. It's hard to say. There are a bunch of different ways you could have contextualized it. But now, the text you get, or the clue you get when you die in game, is you have the XP deficit, and you had a near-death experience, which is why all of the changes you made to the world, it don't just revert. You nearly died, and so my running theory now is essentially when you die in the game, what happens is you were going to die. You were inches from death. Your character dropped everything, depending on your settings. You can have it set to just drop your backpack or just your tool belt, whatever, or everything. They dropped what they needed to and ran back to base and passed out, which is why you spawn near your bed or on your bed. So you do sleep, just not on purpose. But when you do die in game, you wake up at or near your bedroll. I mean, those are literally your only two options. It's true. So maybe when you die, the game is explaining your respawning away as you just having a nightmare? I mean, that would make sense. I'm sure I'd be having trouble sleeping and probably experiencing nightmares when I do sleep if I were trying to survive in such an apocalypse. What's with this? Why? The mic cut out. Why? Dude, come on. Sure, but any changes you make to the world and any looting you've done remains even after death. It doesn't revert back. So maybe we are just an intelligent robot, one that doesn't sleep, but simulates needing to sleep and eat and drink and has to deal with the elements, learning to construct makeshift tools and equipment and becoming stronger and faster and smarter as we traverse the zombie-infested lands planted here by the government in an effort to experiment to see if a human could possibly actually survive the zombie apocalypse. This would also explain why zombies can burst through walls and detect us from vast distances and hunt us relentlessly. It would explain why large concentrations of zombies are found in areas with lots of loot, some even hidden to try to catch us off guard as we scavenge for supplies we don't even really need because we're a robot. You know, it was funny. You know, it was kind of funny. It was a dumb bit. It was a really dumb bit. It was executed fine. I could have just left it there, but I didn't. And that's what really hurts. Is I know, and I knew at the time this was a dumb bit. Like, yeah, okay, it does make sense. It makes sense. It's a dumb theory that totally fills all of the plot holes. Ha ha ha. But no, we're almost certainly not an android. It's a dumb bit, and it's I cringe every time I see it now. I'm actually surprised by how few comments on this video make fun of that. There are a few. There are definitely a few very valid comments that said, yeah, you lost me at the dumb robot bit when you put tinfoil on your head. Valid. But, oh man. Oh, what a nightmare. Okay. That, or people hide, people congregate, yep, people die in an apocalypse. Thank you. Now that I've had my fun. But you did... Sorry. But I do it again! And I've probably driven away half of the people that clicked on this video. There are probably lots of zombies in high loot areas because they were staying where supplies were before they returned. Yes. Also, yes, I was very close here. I was on the right track with that little bit, but there's even further explanation here, which is the shelter-in-place order that I proposed or have proposed in other more recent videos. You see, if COVID-19, the worldwide pandemic, has taught us anything about how humanity is going to react to a situation like this, and obviously this is an extreme version, but if it's taught us anything, it's that when faced with a worldwide issue, plenty of people are going to fool themselves into thinking nothing is wrong, or that the problem is being exacerbated. There are still going to be plenty of people going to football games, going to work, going out to the bar if that's available. Don't read into that too much, though. All I'm saying is we have real-world data showing that people would absolutely still be out and about doing their usual thing as World War III and a worldwide pandemic broke out. The Android idea is a fun one to think about that does actually answer a lot of questions about how and why the game is the way it is. But it's stupid. But at the end of the day, many of these unrealistic mechanics are unrealistic because it's a video game. Or they're a little unrealistic, but we're talking about an unrealistic apocalypse. And if you spent just another hour of your time, Holden, just thinking about it, just trying to think about some of the things that seem unrealistic and trying to explain them away reasonably, maybe you could have had some ideas. Maybe you could have started a series 2 years earlier that proved to be the most popular series that you've ever made on your YouTube channel and roped you most of your subscribers. Maybe. Sorry. Or is it? Oh, why? Stop. Oh, in the face. Oh. Fuck. That's staying in the video. For now, without any further evidence to suggest who we are or where we came from, we can get to some interesting world-building stuff. In a zombie apocalypse, there are already a lot of questions to be asked. In 7 Days to Die, there are even more. Like, what caused the zombie outbreak? What happened?
Such a terrible
Maybe
transition.
let's start this time with what we can for sure gather in-game. First, there are 2 newspapers you can find scattered about the game on the ground. You can't actually pick them up, but we can take a look at the blurry and damaged articles and get 2 big details to play with. One headline from The Daily News, very imaginative, simply states, "Flu epidemic." Another says
Blurry
nuclear
720p glory.
something. It looks like a D starts the next word, so I'm going with nuclear devastation. We can't see any legible dates on the papers, so all we have are 2 mildly vague events that happened at some point before everything went to hell.
So far, I'm on a good
Nuclear
track.
bombs and a flu epidemic.
Sure.
There are some other in-game hints, though, as to what's actually going on here, or at least what went on.
Okay, I was on the right track with the newspapers. I just wish I had taken more time to explore that. Though I'm not 100% certain on anything. I'm fairly certain at this point that first came World War III, then came the virus. To some extent. They were, in fact, very close. But right now I'm thinking either the Duke himself created the zombie virus in its current form, as alluded to in the game's original trailer, and in what I found thus far, or at least he had a hand in it. Either way, I believe the virus was manufactured, and the World War may have even had a hand in expediting that process. And this is a little bit loose, as is everything in this series, let's be honest. But just how zombie-like the depiction of the person in the flu epidemic newspaper looks kind of alludes to the idea that there were, in fact, already zombies as newspapers were still being printed, so before nuclear devastation. However, the fact that we at the same time have the nuclear devastation newspaper means it's most likely that these events were occurring pretty much at the same time. Maybe 1 or 2 tactical nukes were dropped in specific areas where there was a high volume of troop movement or something, and so there was time for the newspapers to be printing out that story at the same time as this flu epidemic, the zombie virus, was really kicking into gear. And so the most likely scenario is that, in fact, around the same time, dozens of nukes were being launched, like end of the world, buttons pushed, everyone's going down with everyone. That is at the same time the zombie virus was really starting to spread everywhere. And in fact, we have some evidence to suggest that perhaps the zombie virus is sort of Walking Dead style, where it's just in the air, it's airborne, and you already have it. Pretty much everyone already has it. If you don't have some natural immunity, by sheer luck, you have it, and as soon as you die, you're going to become a zombie either way. I'm not 100% on that just yet, but that's the best theory I've got as to how the actual virus, the reanimation works. And so as, World War is peaking, as millions upon billions are dying of nuclear devastation, they're immediately being reanimated. We have a nuclear and zombie apocalypse at the same time. Anyway, I wish I had taken more time to explore that when I made this video, but at the same time, I'm kind of glad a little bit that I didn't, because now I am better at making these kinds of videos, I would hope, I think. Let's keep watching.
Higashi Pharmaceutical used to be the 2nd tallest building in the game, and it houses some interesting secrets. Deep within the labs of Higashi, we can actually find zombies in test tubes. Now, in the video you're watching now, you won't see zombies in test tubes, but you will see the areas where the zombies broke out of them. And I can tell you they were in the test tubes. Trust me, believe it. They were definitely they were in the test tubes. This is before I learned console commands in 7 Days to Die. You just hit F7, I believe. Just F7, and that gets rid of the user interface. I didn't even do that. I didn't even know that was a thing. And so all I literally did is I tried to sneak into Higashi and get, an in-game real no cheats view of this. But of course, after several attempts, I couldn't, because they are scripted to the moment you enter a certain area, they bust out of the tubes. Oh, God, this video is bad. I just alerted them on my way up to this area.
Yeah.
They're incredibly tough zombies, by the way, not fun to deal with. But what's going on here?
On your game stage.
We could immediately jump to the conclusion that Higashi created the zombies, but given the flu newspaper, it seems more likely Higashi is, or was working on a cure.
Which is valid. At the time, with how little I knew, very valid thoughts. However, with what I know now, I actually, and this is possible spoilers for a future Stories of Navezgane video, I think it's rather possible that the Duke was, at the head of the zombie virus manufacturing, and Higashi was his means to that end. Higashi was where he made that magic happen. Now, if I remember correctly, let's go ahead and watch just the longest silence for no reason, where I'm just walking around. Why did I feel the need to keep this? But because this is kind of cool, I guess. Ugh. There are several running theories in the community trying to depict what the actual timeline is here, and I have some of my own. But perhaps this flu going around was turning people into zombies. As the problem became more and more serious, any and all medical facilities began dedicating all of their resources to developing a cure. Well, okay, probably not all of them, but certainly all of them were either dealing directly with or at least feeling the vast effects of the virus. We know this from COVID-19. Not every medical facility everywhere has the means to aid in the finding of a cure, but they're all going to be feeling the effects. They're all going to have full beds. They're all going to be all hands-on for this sort of thing.
The situation started getting really out of hand. Nukes were launched to contain completely or near completely infected areas. From there, nuclear war. Give it some time and we end up with 7 days to die.
No. I mean, I know I just went over exactly how I think the timeline went now, but no. If there is a World War III, the only reason any military would ever launch a nuclear weapon onto their own soil would be to wipe out invaders. Land that they had already lost. I guess you could consider a zombie army or the massive horde, millions of zombies in an invasion force, but no, it's a slim chance. That's probably not what happened. There is evidence in Navezgane of bombed out areas, probably not nuclear detonations, but, massively bombed areas. So it's very likely that ordnance was used against the zombie hordes, but not nuclear, not on their own soil. That's not why nuclear bombs were dropped. At least not in, the US where we are now. That is almost certainly from foreign enemies launching nukes over in World War III. And besides all that, though, in this video, put it on the side. This video right here, I go over the nuclear radiation surrounding Navezgane, and it's incredibly unlikely. Why did I go Scooby-Doo there? It's incredibly unlikely that the radiation surrounding Navezgane is due to nuclear fallout from nuclear weapons, from bombs. Though that's probably the answer. I might have gone a bit too realistic with the science in that video. I'm still saying with the evidence we have in-game now, it's highly unlikely that nuclear bombs caused the radiation zone surrounding Navezgane. I guess I'll probably eat my words later for that. My personal theory, however, is slightly different. COVID-19, I mean, some strange... The spin is literally, they were again, in Windows Movie Maker. This is I was making this in 2020 with Windows Movie Maker 2012 or 2014 edition. I don't know, something even older than that. There were maybe a dozen video edits you could just drag and drop. You could plop on to any section of video. And this was one of them. And so I literally just cut this tiny piece out of the video and dragged and dropped in a 360 spin. It worked. It did its job. I smacked my mic again out of frustration. But God, is it bad. Sorry, let's get back to it. This new flu starts plaguing the world. Nukes were dropped on hot zones to try and contain it because world leaders are usually nut jobs to some degree.
That's true.
And some time passes, giving way to three things. First, newspapers and articles have time to flood the environment reporting on nuclear devastation on this flu.
Almost on the right track.
A full-on nuclear war develops as nations try to contain each other, giving way to some of the harsh and desolate air. I will admit that's possible. It's possible that, perhaps, maybe the escalation from a few tactical nukes in some military conflict, maybe the escalation was justified by saying, this country, let's say Russia, decided, United States, this zombie apocalypse is slowly happening. You're not handling your shit well enough. We're going to drop a few nukes on you to protect the rest of the world. That I can see happening. But the timeline I'm presenting in this old video, it's just not. It's so close to being on the right track, but it's not. Areas we can find in-game.
Then, the massive amount of radiation infecting the Earth mutates that flu, creating a new
There is
zombie
some truth
flu
to that.
eventually overtakes everything.
We do have radiated
Probably.
zombies. Yeah. So that bit.
The
might be
biggest
true.
hole in that theory, though, is that none of the zombies seem to be prepped for a zombie apocalypse. We find zombies in business attire still in offices, lumberjacks and
observation.
flannels in the woods,
Yep.
cheerleaders and football players still in their uniforms, and so on and so on. Which to me seems to imply the zombie outbreak occurred very, very suddenly. One moment, everyone's living their lives, the next,
So close.
everything changed when the Fire Nation zombie apocalypse.
Funny joke, haha. I was so close. I was on the right track. I'm so glad that I thought to include this in the video. I needed to take it one step further. What I've postulated now, as I've talked about before in this video and many others, the shelter-in-place order, as things are ramping up, eventually there's going to be a breaking point where local, state, federal governments start saying, okay, everyone, we need to make some drastic efforts to contain this shelter in place. So people are still going to work, people are still out at football games, people are out at the bar, and suddenly, the reason it seems so sudden, it seems like people were unprepared. It's very likely people were aware and prepared at home, or at their businesses, which is why we can find, crates of supplies, we can find defenses, we can find businesses with kind of zombie adjacent names. Like, people saw this coming, but it happened very suddenly when there was a shelter in place order and people were stuck where they were, and that's why it seems like it happened suddenly. It ramped up slowly to this very drastic shelter in place order. So I was on the right track, I just needed to take it 1 or 2 steps further. Either way, we can be quite certain that nuclear detonations and a flu epidemic were involved in the creation of the zombies, or at least the setting the zombies are in. Yeah.
Maybe the flu alone created zombies and the bombs created the landscape. There's not much more to go off of in this regard.
Okay, that's better. No.
Or is there? I've spent, frankly, a silly amount of time performing research for this video, and I'm embarrassed to say there's one big clue to the story that I didn't find until well into the process of writing this. And this comes right off the top of the game's Gamepedia wiki. Now, as far as I can tell, this is an unofficial description for 7 Days to Die, but it's floating all over, so it reads as follows. In the near future, the Third World War leaves the Earth in ruins, but the worst has yet to come. In the year 2013, nuclear attacks have decimated the Earth, and the remaining population is infected by an unknown virus. Nobody knows for sure if it was the radiation.
What is this pan? Why did I decide that I needed to add some motion to the video by cutting off a part of the... Look at that! I'm cutting off the text in order to add this modicum of motion.
The biochemical weapons, or an act of God, but an unknown virus soon transformed the surviving humans into an army of the animated dead, acting as a single-minded being. The infected die within 7 days and soon reanimate, becoming bloodthirsty zombies. No one believed it, nobody expected it, and nothing can stop it. You play a survivor trapped in the savage, zombie-infested world of Navezgane County,
Just
Arizona,
summarize it, dude.
one of the last true Edens on Earth. Ironically, Navezgane means killer of monsters to the Apache who have inhabited the land for centuries, and that's pretty much what you'll do as you fight to survive and search for the truth behind what really happened. Well, that is enlightening, but let's break this down one step at a time. Third World War, nuclear detonations, that much makes sense.
Checks out.
That tracks.
Yep.
The year 2013 is when this occurs. Okay, sure. Biochemical weapons.
Okay. At the time, with what I knew, the year 2013 did in fact make no sense. What I know now, though, based on this video, I do now know that it is at least the year 2020 in-game. We now know. So it does kind of make sense that perhaps, given all of the everything we see in-game, it does kind of make sense that perhaps 2013 was a turning point. 2013 was the beginning of everything. So I wish I had known that, because now my timeline in the game, in this video, is kind of just wrong.
Where did that come from?
Biochemical weapons.
I have no idea.
Yeah.
A single-minded zombie being. Yeah, that does make a lot of sense, actually. The zombies do seem to quite often act as one, except when they don't. The infected die within 7 days. So this description seems to be implying that the title of the game is about how long it takes for the something to turn you into a zombie, not about the blood moon that turns the night sky red and occurs every 7 days.
Future video, by the way.
Ruthless horde of zombies at the player. I think in older versions of the game you do in fact die from infection within 7 days. I'm not actually sure if that's the case anymore. I should probably check. Am I really going to check right now? Yeah, I should check right now. Okay, so I've actually just taken the time to open up a game, get my player character infected, and do some back of the envelope math. With default settings, default time speed, default day length, with everything at pretty much default, currently in alpha 20.3 or whatever we're at right now, it would take just under 6 days. But I realized midway through doing that, it doesn't really matter. You can mess with the day length. You can mess with, I think it's even a setting for how long the infection takes to kill you. There's so many different things that can alter that. The idea that the game is called 7 Days to Die because the infection kills you in 7 days is just wrong on 8 different levels. So anyway, let's get back to the video. That was a lot of my time for nothing. Well, okay, let's be reasonable. Maybe it's both. Navezgane being one of the last Edens on Earth does at least make a lot of sense. I'll give that one. Yep. Given the borders of the world are full of such intense radiation, you just can't pass them. And finally, Apache. Cool. There are nods to that in-game in certain locations.
Everywhere,
certain
actually.
Items. That one also tracks. Now, I have to admit, there are some bits in there
music
that make
ramping
a lot of sense. But the timeline and a lot of the details just don't make sense given the evidence we have been and will be looking at. I don't know where they came from. Who decided this occurs in 2013? That doesn't make a lot of sense given the setting and when the game actually came out. Who decided that biochemical weapons were involved? Where do you find any information regarding that?
Pretty much nowhere.
It seems like a lot of this was just kind of added in for flavor without any actual substantial evidence of any of this occurring in game.
I was kind of right about that.
I felt the need to bring this description up despite the flaws I perceive in it for a couple of reasons. Firstly, when I found it, I had a feeling that anybody watching this video might know of it and comment about it and say, look, this answers half the questions you attempted to answer yourself, and it says different things.
We're right.
Secondly, it shows up online a lot. And I mean a lot. But mostly on server lists and other unofficial sites not associated with the fun pimps. The most quote-unquote official place I can trace this description is to the Gamepedia wiki. But interestingly enough, the official Wikipedia page on wikipedia.com for 7 Days to Die doesn't mention this description at all. So, frankly, as far as I can tell...
That much is true. I do remember spending a disproportionate amount of time just trying to find anything, like, officially associated with the fun pimps, with the developers, that had this description. It's not there. It's not on the Steam store page. It's not on their website. I don't think it's in their forums. To be fair, I was right about that. I don't think this is an official description written by anyone at the Fun Pimps. If it was, it took a lot of creative liberties just to kind of sell the game.
Some early fan probably wrote this for the Gamepedia wiki, and it became the sort of official, unofficial description of the world.
I'm
not so sure of it, though. I mean, it mentions that this all happens in the near future, quote-unquote, in 2013. But the game wasn't even released until December of 2013.
Well, somebody wrote that description before the game was released, which probably wasn't released as early as they wanted, given how video game development works. And also, December 30th, 2013 is the near future of December 15th, 2013. So, it's still technically correct.
Though I'm totally willing to be wrong here. Despite this description's accuracy, meaning half of my video is completely null and void,
it is.
I'd like to know. So if you have any information regarding it, let me know in the comments below. I promise I would love to check it out.
And no, not many people did, so I went and checked it out myself, and here we are.
I want to drop this, but there is one more place this description could have come from. 7 Days to Die started on Kickstarter in July of 2013. Yep. So why don't we take a little trip to that old page and see if we can dig anything up.
You gotta shave.
Oh wow. Okay, hold on. There's a story section on the Kickstarter. My god. Maybe this did come from the Fun Pimps. Let's take a look.
That was devastating at the time.
Well, I guess that's another dead end.
It was. However, I do believe I found the video that was supposed to be embedded there. That was supposed to link to later. It's the first video the Fun Pimps ever put out for 7 Days to Die on their YouTube. You can still find it now, and I use it a lot, I believe, in the this video here on the Duke. So, with no other evidence to support the validity of that description of the game, I'm going to move on, assuming it is not official, especially given all the inconsistencies with what I've thus far found. If it turns out to be official, then I'll have to admit a lot of my research has been for nothing, but for now, we move on. Oh, the long... Why do I hold on? Hey, hello, me from the future. I just wanted to throw this quick addendum in here. I know I spent way too long on this official description, but I was editing the video and I was like, why didn't I look harder for an official description of the game from the Fun Pimps? Why didn't you look harder for a lot of things? So I did that, and I can report that I was like 90% right. That description is not official. It does not come from the Fun Pimps. I found the Fun Pimps official description of 7 Days to Die on their website, and there are a couple of things that this unofficial description does take right out of this, such as Navezgane being one of the last true Edens on Earth, or the bit about the Third World War happening. That is all true. That is all canon, as according to the official description from the Fun Pimps. But most of their official description is about the gameplay, talking about how it's a tower defense, role-playing game, first-person shooter, survival horror, all these things together. It's mostly talking about the gameplay. They don't expand much on the story or the universe or any of that. So, TLDR, I was mostly right, but there are a couple of things from the unofficial description that do come straight from the official description. So, moving on, that chapter is closed. TLDR, it's kind of annoying that you feel the need to point out that you were mostly correct, but anyway. Thank you. The titles. So, if not in 2013, how long ago did this all happen? We do get several clues in-game as to when all of this went down. Context clues, really, but the first big hint is actually the vehicles. Most of the vehicles you can find in-game look pretty similar. They're mostly just color variations, and many have speculated online that they look a lot like mid to late 80s Hyundai Sonatas. So many people were upset about this. I had so many comments of people saying, no, it's not that car, it's this car. You're so off. Dude, I spent like 20 or 30 minutes looking into cars of that era, and that's the closest thing I could find. But there were enough comments to be noteworthy of people saying, no, you don't know cars at all, dude. I don't. It's this car, it's this car, it's this other car. I guess you never really know what's going to grab people's attention, but for whatever reason, this grabbed people enough to comment about it. Take this and the general architecture of buildings, the way zombies are dressed, and honestly, kind of just the feeling of the game. I still agree with that. Our best guess is probably that everything really fell apart in the late 80s, maybe early 90s. While I still agree with my general assessment that, yeah, the vibe is late 80s, early 90s, you just gotta admit, it's just the models used. Perhaps they were borrowed from somewhere. Perhaps it's just what they had, what available to them for one reason or another. It's just the game, unfortunately. I know I like to take only in-game evidence as much as I can. This one, you just gotta admit, it's just the game. I was wrong. It is not late 80s, early 90s where things really fell apart. Perhaps in the early 90s, or maybe even mid-late 90s is when the motion of all of this began. But no, I was very wrong. Another vehicle we can see every so often in the game is an aircraft that flies overhead and delivers supplies of varying helpfulness. Now, the glimpse we can get of it in-game isn't great, so from the vague pictures I could find online, I spent far too long trying to figure out what the aircraft might actually be, and to be honest, I don't have a solid answer. But the overall design resembles military aircraft designs of a couple of certain eras. It could be a C-46 or 47 used in World War II, or maybe even an AN-24 used in the 60s. But this vague detail doesn't quite match up with the more concrete evidence of vehicles littering the ground, so more on this later. Yeah, this doesn't line up exactly with what I have in mind thus far, so This is another one of those things, though, like the vehicle. I guess when you try to specify something, like a niche, when you try to nail down a detail about a very niche thing, like a historic plane or cars or whatever, people get riled up, because people were also very riled up about me trying to guess what this plane was. And it didn't help that I, again, didn't know how to use the tools built into the game that would allow me to better analyze this plane. I have way better shots of the plane now, but there are a lot of comments. There are a lot of comments surmising, guessing at what that plane actually is, and there are a lot that agree with me that does kind of look like a C-46 or 47. I've also seen DC-3 put out there a lot, I think, but yeah, this is just another one of those details that we don't have any information about. We can guess, but because of how little information we have about it, we just can't pull a lot from it, so it doesn't matter a lot yet. But a lot of people really got riled up about this one too. Oh, the long
We can also look at the zombies themselves. Many of them show a lot of decomposition, many more not so much. And now that how long does it take for a human body to decompose is in my Google search history, I can tell you with confidence that it takes on average about 8 to 12 years.
Depending on conditions.
Assuming this zombie flu doesn't somehow slow the rate of decomposition, it's...
Why would I assume that? Why do I make that assumption? Who is to say that it doesn't slow
Fair to say the zombies haven't been decomposing for very long. Certainly not as long as 8 years. Again, there are varying levels of decomposition among different zombies, and for some reason a lot of them are missing just one eye, but most of them are still quite visibly human. Skin discoloration and some festering wounds are common, but most skin is still quite present. Not a fun topic, I know, but if we're taking everything we can get, then this tells us something. Whatever moment was really the start of the apocalypse was probably within the last year at most.
No, that's just not true. We have more zombie models now than we did then. They're more detailed now than they were then. So, I'll give 2020 Holden the benefit of the doubt here. But knowing now that it is actually quite likely that, shit really hit the fan around 2013-ish, it actually does. The levels of decomposition we see do line up pretty well with these zombies being around for anywhere from 1 to 8 years, maybe, based on the conditions they're in, and based on how many different conditions there are available for them to be in this specific setting, this specific zombie apocalypse in Navezgane. So basically, I was wrong. I was quite wrong. It does line up that 2013 was the year everything went down, and that zombies have been existing for 1 to 8. Each of these zombies has been a zombie for 1 day to 8 years. That it lines up well enough, because again, I don't know why I assume that the zombie virus doesn't slow down decomposition at all. I feel like that's a weird assumption.
I have seen some people online try to say it's been much longer, as most of those Sonata-esque vehicles you find are quite dirty and rusted. But that doesn't prove much. Firstly, it doesn't take a vehicle long at all, really, to start showing visible rust in the right conditions. Conditions such as, nuclear detonations, violently throwing elements
didn't
such
happen
as
in
in
Navezgane
every which way.
Yeah,
leave that car out in the middle of the road with nothing to protect it, and the oxidation will leave visible rust in no time after something like that. And it'll be caked in dirt, thrown about by the explosions as well.
I mean, that was mostly a baseless claim. I don't know why I decided. I guess I wanted to support my own theory, and so I said something that kind of made sense. And it does kind of make sense, but there's no signs of nuclear anything within the sort of box of Navezgane. So, perhaps dust and all the dirt, the wind, all that water was kicked around by maybe, yeah. But it's just wrong. It's just wrong. We know what the timeline is now, and we just gotta admit that the cars are just a model that the developers had and used. That's it. So also, I thought that was the coolest shot ever, by the way, when I made that video. That jumping down and fading to black just before I splat. Thought that was so cool.
Now we sort of have an idea of who we are, and how we got here, and when this all happened.
Some of it's wrong, though.
So, what's left?
Oh, the terrible transition.
Well, the most obvious place to begin here is the strange landscape. Small cities completely torn apart by nuclear devastation, other bombings, or the zombies themselves. Most likely all three.
No.
We also see
we don't. Okay,
stretches of land inhospitable to most life due to what seems to have been bombing.
Yes. Okay. So this is true. We do know, or we can very strongly surmise, that there were in fact bombs dropped in Navezgane based on landscapes like this, the wastelands and whatnot. And there are mines everywhere. We know that there was a strong effort to contain and eradicate the zombie hordes. And based on actually a more recent video, we'll say, I keep doing that in the mirror, right here. This video right here, I'm pretty certain that Navajo County, Arizona, real life place is the equivalent, the inspiration, and the closest thing to where Navezgane County, Arizona is in real life. Based on the population of that, and the population of White River, which is within Navajo County, Arizona, which I think is probably like the most direct center of what Navezgane in-game is. Based on their populations, it makes a lot of sense. The number of zombies we see and the amount of destruction we see that probably eradicated most of those zombies. Because believe if there is any military left, if there's any official military left, or even just survivors with access to bombs, to explosives, to explosive ordnance, they're gonna use them on zombie hordes, and they're going to be ecstatic to do so. So yeah, lots of areas heavily bombed out. That much is true. Given the lack of radiation and
no
the
evidence of
craters that
nuclear
spread
devastation
throughout
here.
it, these are probably the remnants of war or of containment efforts.
Yes.
But we can also find lush forests and stretches of wilderness seemingly untouched by this whole
Because it's remote
nightmare,
enough.
other than the zombies roaming through them. We can explain most of that, especially with any of our previous theories as to what's going on.
Yeah.
We're an android being tested on survivability, in which case the array of climates and settings seems quite fitting. Or we're truly in one of the last hospitable places on Earth, in which case that in itself kind of explains the untouched areas. And also, Navezgane County, Navajo County, Arizona is remote enough, it's low population, especially certain parts of it are low population enough that you could kind of expect them to be mostly untouched, especially by nuclear devastation in this post-war, post-apocalypse setting. Once again, it would make sense either way, given the living people we deal with in-game. Well, that's a bit misleading. We do get to interact with some living people, but only in the form of traders.
Still true.
Perhaps these traders are among the last survivors in Navezgane, both those we're aware of and unaware of.
Good thought.
Slow fade. We know of the White River settlement. In fact, several traders fly the White River flag over their posts. We also know of Duke's gang all too well. But there are other gangs or factions we can hear about via various notes, which give us quests or missions in-game.
Not confirmed
Even the
whether they're
traders
alive
that
or
don't
not.
fly flags probably belong to one of these groups of people, or they could just be surviving on their own, still biting chunks off the delicious fruits of capitalism, which for some reason persists in the apocalypse. Don't know why I felt the need to include that line.
I actually had a couple of comments that were really annoyed at that as well, which is kind of funny.
But yeah, we do know that at least some of the traders, probably all of them, need to pay protection money to the Duke and his gang, or his whatever the case is with the Duke. We know that they pay him for protection, a tribute really to their dictator king. But because they also fly the White River flag above their trading posts, we can probably surmise that at least most of them are actually followers of Noah, and perhaps they're just not strong. The White River settlement isn't strong enough to actively oppose the Duke. But it is a hint. It is a hint that perhaps a lot of these traders do oppose the Duke, just not outright. They're still going to pay him protection money because they have to survive. But there are probably a lot of them associate or affiliate themselves with the White River faction, clan, location, whatever it is. There's no evidence any of them are with the gangs. And he is a dick. We don't ever actually run into any of these factions other than through their traders, maybe. We can, however, find some of their settlements and bases, empty and seemingly abandoned.
Perhaps
These
the
are
place
the only signs we
player
can find
character
of
once
our
stayed.
leaving friends. Perhaps the zombies took them. Perhaps the zombies within the bases are them.
True.
Seems more and more like we, the player, and the traders are the only living humans left around here. Except, remember that plane we discussed earlier? What is that all about? Who's doing that? To be honest, there's really no evidence that can give us any real hints to help us answer those questions, but we can speculate. If we go off of what we've speculated before, assuming the plane is a little old, it seems unlikely the people sending in supplies are military or government.
Why?
They could be, but I find it much more likely that far more efficient and modern aircraft,
Why?
relative to the time period of the game we believe it's in, would be used.
Why? Just because it's old? Listen, if we're in a zombie apocalypse, post-World War III situation, if there's any semblance of civilization left, if there's any government, any functioning military left at all, they're not going to be picky about what kinds of aircraft they can get up in the air. In fact, it might be even more likely that they would have older aircraft, because in World War III, they wouldn't be used. Those older aircraft wouldn't ever see action. They would be some of the only ones left. So it actually makes more sense that it would be outdated. Why didn't I think this through?
It's possible this is some other private group, perhaps a larger group
That's
of survivors in a better off area nearby.
It's true.
They can't get to us safely, though, through the radiation, and they can't land to pick us up, given the large number of infected in the area.
Fair enough.
So they drop in whatever supplies they can. How
But
they know
why?
we're alive is unclear. Perhaps they've used that plane for scouting and happened to spot people.
Or we're definitely an android and the government is sending in various supplies to see what would be the most helpful to us in the simulated survival scenario. I don't know why I kept hitting on this bit. I admitted earlier in the video that I was driving away viewers, that it's a dumb bit and it's cringe, but I kept doing, what? Why?
Who knows? Other than that, though, there's not a whole lot left. There is evidence
There
of these
is.
other survivors in the area, boarded up houses, fortifications, weapons, and loot caches, but never any survivors to be found, only more dead and well, undead.
Mostly undead.
So it's likely these things aren't evidence of people sheltering before this all went down, but actually just fortifications developed by survivors after.
They're the same thing. People were told to shelter in place before most people were zombies, and then because they were stuck there already, they built fortifications against the zombie horde that was rising. They're the same thing, dude.
So what's our final verdict? What might the full story actually be? I think there are two most likely possibilities here, and this last
one.
part of the video is going to be the telling of those two stories.
I almost want to just skip this, but I'm gonna endure it.
You, the player, are an intelligent android. You were developed by the government in a secret project to test and research survivability and survival tactics, as well as reconstruction efforts in a post-World War III scenario. Plopped down in the middle of a controlled environment, you have no memories, only one directive: survive. You were booted up in a random location with nothing but basic supplies and a couple of notes to get you started. You are secretly watched as you struggle to survive and overcome the inhospitable environment of this fake county called Navezgane, Arizona. Various caches and loot is spread throughout the area to test your scavenging patterns. Airdrops are flown in with various supplies to test what would be the most useful in this scenario. Trading stations run by other, less intelligent androids are dispersed throughout the area to gauge trading habits and see what would be the most valuable in an apocalyptic setting. Finally, hordes of, hopefully, fake zombies are unleashed upon you, the android player, every 7 nights, to test survival tactics. These hordes become increasingly dangerous as time progresses and as scientists behind screens push the limits of what one resourceful person can survive. Until eventually the simulation ends with your shutdown, when you, the player, close the game and eventually never return.
It's so dumb, but like it makes
It's all
sense.
a simulation. You are an android, and none of this is real.
I mean, technically, yeah. Oh, God, I hate it so much. Probably closer to the actual story. Yeah, God. What the hell?
You, the player, are a survivor of the Third World War, just trying to survive in Navezgane, Arizona. You spent a few months getting by, just scavenging the land, living a terrifying
a lot more than a
nomadic
few months.
lifestyle, taking shelter wherever you could.
In fact, that would actually explain why the player character eventually has the skills that they do to construct things. That would be essential to survive years in this setting.
Unfortunately, a ruthless bandit leader known only as the Duke has taken up the responsibility of collecting taxes and providing protection for the
true.
people of Navezgane.
That
When
was
you
true.
fail to pay your dues, you are punished and stripped and beaten by the Duke's lackeys, left only with a note of warning of what is to come if you don't pay on time next time.
And unfortunately, though, we still don't know why exactly the player character needed to pay. Were we a traitor? Were we a part of some gang that was going against the Duke? We have no evidence pointing in any direction, unfortunately, but that's still true.
Found unconscious and half-naked, a friendly stranger drags you to relative safety
Not
and
really.
leaves you some basic supplies and a note hinting at the possibility of you joining his group of survivors if you can prove yourself. Determined to survive and figure out what's going on around here, you pick yourself up. You build, you scavenge, you fortify, and explore. On this journey
Except
of
you've
survival,
already been here for years, probably.
you piece together hints toward the truth.
Except we already know.
A nuclear war left the world in ruins, and Navezgane might be one of the last few places not completely decimated by the war. However, An illness that perhaps you have some form of immunity to has spread across the world.
That's actually probably true. Most of the survivors now who aren't zombies are probably by sheer natural luck immune, or at least semi-immune, or more actively able to fight the virus than those who are already zombies. That much is true.
Perhaps this illness was released in the form of a bioweapon during the previously mentioned Third World War.
Wait, did I say earlier that... Hold on. I said earlier in the video, where does that come from? That makes no sense. And then just use it later in the video anyway? What?
Perhaps there was a nasty
Why?
flu going around and the radiation from the bombs mutated it. Either way, those who perish from this illness change. And when they change, they reanimate as mindless, violent shells of what they once were. Basic feral creatures that seek only to sleep, kill, and eat. As you deal with larger and larger groups of stronger and stronger hordes, it becomes apparent their mindless rage is so strong, even brick walls cannot withstand them for long.
It's true.
But a glimmer of hope there must be others out there.
Dramatic
A plane airdrops in supplies relatively near your location on a regular basis. These supplies and these caches, however, are sometimes scarce or not entirely helpful, and the plane itself doesn't seem very new. Perhaps there are people out there, not the government, but good people that want to help you or any other survivors in the area. Maybe they can't get to you because of the radiation in between you and them.
It's true.
Maybe they don't want to risk bringing someone in from a contaminated zone. Either way, you're not entirely alone. But as you discover, you sort of are, at least in your immediate area. Those airdrops are never picked up by anyone else. Exploring Navezgane, you find remnants of the other survivors' hideouts, defenses, caches of supplies, fortifications, and even entire small settlements are spread throughout the county. But never any survivors, just more zombies. Perhaps all of the other survivors are being picked off, turning.
Yeah.
You find notes with challenges from people apparently watching you, but never the people that left them. Perhaps not all of these notes are actually for you.
That's a good thought, too, one I don't think I've touched on in a while. We could just be finding... These notes never allude, they never give any details actually confirming that they're watching us, the player character. They could have been left for other people that never found them. They could be from gangs that are absolute stealth masters, but there's no evidence that they're actually for us. So perhaps a lot of these gangs have been wiped out by the zombies, by the Duke, or maybe they've been absorbed into the Duke's gang, or they've joined the White River settlements. But yeah, there's no evidence actually that these gangs are still around.
The only people you can find are people in fortified areas who are willing to trade with you, but they never leave their shops. And you can't really blame them. If all of their friends are dead and all they have left is a fortified shop, perhaps you're the crazy one for venturing into the unknown. And venturing into that unknown, you also discover there were efforts to contain this disease. But clearly, whoever was performing this research has also been taken by the mutant flu.
Mutant flu, sure, we can call it that. Efforts to contain the disease, to cure the disease, but actually what we're looking at here is most likely efforts to create the zombified disease. Long hold, great.
Even military installations were eventually put in place. Maybe they were trying to help stop the spread of the disease. Maybe they were installed to help protect populations. Maybe they were installed to help eliminate populations. Regardless of what they were here for, even they fell prey to the end times.
It's also very apparent that they have been here for a while. It's not eventually they were installed. It's they've been here. All of these military camps were probably established within the first couple of years of within the 2013 to 2015 timeline.
The hordes of zombies grow more intense as the weeks go by.
Dramatic end.
Perhaps the unknown flu that has infected the deceased populations of the world is mutating from the radiation that covers much of the planet
that's true.
and surrounds you in Navezgane.
That's true.
The idea that this all went down fairly recently and that the radiation is playing a major role is supported by the fact that you do see more and more strange and glowing zombies over time. It's probably only a matter of time before you succumb as well.
That's all true.
All there is left to do is survive. Survive as long as you can. Perhaps those people sending in supplies from afar will find a way to get to you. Or you might find a way to get to them.
Yes.
But you can't focus on that now. The hordes approach. The moon turns crimson in honor of the blood that will be spilled.
Artsy.
All you can do now is make sure that spilled blood isn't your own.
Hey. It makes me happy to cringe at this because that means I've grown, but oh man, this video is a lot. So there you have it. Some clarification, self-deprecating humor, and letting off some pent-up steam over what I hate happens to be my most popular video. Thank you guys so much for sticking around and watching. I appreciate you all and look forward to hopping back on the regular Stories of Navezgane train. Keep an eye out for that, and as always, I'll see you then.